Hi, I'm James Hogan.
And I'm Stacy Miller, and this is the September 2024 edition of Western Wednesdays.
Hey, Stacy, welcome back.
Yeah, exciting to be back. Students are back on campus.
Yeah, and welcome back to North Carolina.
Welcome back to North Carolina. Had a great time.
Shipped you off to Maryland for a while.
Yes, good learning moment.
It was a good learning moment, and unfortunately, it meant that you were out of the office when we recorded this month's episode of Western Wednesday, so you missed the whole thing.
I missed the whole thing. But how was it talking to Dale?
Preston and Dale were just amazing. So Preston Jacobson, Dale Collins, both Catamounts, both doing really interesting work in Western North Carolina. Dale runs the Tuckasegee Fly Shop, and Preston Jacobson is the executive director of Haywood Waterways. And we had a long and really cool conversation about how the environment, how water quality, how ecotourism, like fly fishing, all of this stuff melds together in so many different ways. And it's probably best, Stacey, because these guys geeked out a little bit. Like Preston was using some words that I can't even say because they're so long. Like it was really, we got into the weeds on it.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Great catamounts. Love seeing them around campus, and excited for our alumni and friends to see this episode.
Before we get into it, if you don't already, be sure to like and subscribe to Western Wednesdays here on YouTube or on Spotify. Click follow, give us a follow on socials. And if you like this episode, be sure to share it with your friends on social media. Tell us about it and help us spread the word about Western Wednesdays.
That's right. And don't hesitate to share stories with us of folks that you think might be interested in joining us and sharing their stories.
Well, I'm excited to share this interview so that you can hear it. So you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Dale Collins, Preston Jacobson, welcome to Western Wednesdays. Glad to have you here.
Appreciate you. Glad to be here. Yeah.
So the reason I wanted to bring both of you here is we get to live, and you guys get to live and work in one of the most incredible and dynamic settings, I think, in the United States, maybe in the world, that being Western North Carolina. You two get to play an incredibly cool part in Western North Carolina. Dale with Tuckasegee Fly Shop, Preston with Haywood Waterways. And I am so excited to talk to you guys today about how those things intersect, how you got here, what it is that got you started into where you are now, and see where that goes. So I just wanted to start by asking you each to tell us a little bit about yourselves, how you got to Cullowhee, and then how you got stuck in Cullowhee, how you stayed around.
It happens.
Yeah.
I heard somebody say this weekend that the mountains here have Velcro on them. You stick to it.
We're going to put that on a magnet.
That's great. You first or me?
You go ahead.
All right.
That opener, why not? Yeah.
So, all the way back in 2001, came here for a campus visit from Central North Carolina down in the Thomasville, Lexington area. And campus was just in perfect shape. And I'm sure that was on purpose for that weekend. But everybody was just so cool, like walking around campus, people I don't know are saying hey to me. And I'm still in high school. I'm just on my tour here. But it felt like home, and it was pretty immediate. Just walking around, I hadn't even met professors yet, or anyone with campus leadership. But it felt like home, and I love how when you come on campus, first thing you see is welcome home Catamounts.
Yeah.
Like I love that. There's still that focus and that philosophy. This is your home for this part of your life, and that's what it was for me.
And by the way, today is like a Chamber of Commerce day. Like it is beautiful outside. Yes. The students are outside in their hammocks. They've got, they're throwing the ball around in the quad. It's like the perfect tour day if you're coming back. And we've got that banner up because of all the students who've just moved in here recently and are back on campus. So, and what about you, Preston?
Very similar. I had a big smile when you said you toured, because for me it was 2005, and I came in, did tour campus, and then the next day we toured the Tuck. And it,
Oh my
it just
gosh.
rained prior, so the water was up. Unbeknownst to me that was an above level CFS, but also the temperature was extremely cold. I say all that because about 5 hours later, I'm getting out with my abs are purple, and I'm hooked. I was on the wait list at NC State. I dropped that within a couple of days and chose Western.
There was no hypothermia at any other college.
Right. No,
so
it
Western
was,
is
it was the tuck that drew me in and kept me here. And I like the Velcro reference a lot.
Yep.
I used to jokingly say to my parents outside, what news from the outside world? Cullowhee just felt like its own bubble. And that was also an attractor for me.
I think a lot of people can identify that.
Yeah.
It's. I remember many years ago, somebody I think on the Balsam Ridge cut a line, and all of a sudden the whole campus went dark in terms of internet, right? And it was, all of a sudden you're thinking, do we send a carrier pigeon or smoke signals, or how do we communicate out of here? But it's always been a little bit removed, another step away. Even today, do you guys feel that way?
It's the physicality for me, being a kind of a terrain nerd, a geography nerd. You put it great or perfectly in the beginning. Cullowhee in itself is the largest valley in the southern Appalachian Range.
Oh, wow.
And if you think about it, you have the Nantahala Mountains, the Cowee Mountains rather, on one side, the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is the Great Balsams on the other, the Plop Balsams, and then the Southern Highlands Plateau. So for me, it's always been the physicality. Looking around, the horizon is always blocked off by mountainous views. So to me, that's kind of the joke that led to what news from the outside world. Yeah,
Yeah. Good place to hang out. Good place to hide out.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always a surprise to me that we can somehow get 11,000 students in here, and it doesn't look like that, right? Like it doesn't
They were
necessarily
about
look.
5,000 when you came in.
Yeah, I think
it was a lot
it was
smaller.
7,
Yeah.
and it had been 7
yeah.
for 40 years, was my understanding.
Yeah.
So,
And not all here, obviously, and even now, not all 11,000 are here.
yeah. But when you try to get from Cullowhee to downtown Silva now, it feels like there's 11,000.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
Traffic
On the
is
one road
amazing.
that we have,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yes.
So Dale, you were an education major, history.
History. Yep.
You left Cullowhee. You went out and taught,
Yep.
and then one day you said, "Forget that. I'm
Yeah.
going fly fishing."
I like the Reader's Digest version of that. Yes.
You can expand upon any of that. Tug on any of those strings.
Yeah, so began fly fishing obviously while I was here. I felt like, kind of going back to what drew me here, this was like going to school on vacation. So growing up in the central part of the state where it's just eternally hot, this was an amazing climate to be in. So began fly fishing then. So already had that established once I left Cullowhee. Taught high school social studies for 5 years and loved my time doing that, but I just wanted something more. And so I was at a point where I either needed to stick it out for 25 more years or let's maybe explore something else. So uprooted the family from Greensboro and relocated back up here. So there's the Velcro piece. And
And your wife came with you.
Yep, wife, and at the time, our firstborn Bryson, and then we brought Madeline along. So yeah, it was a shock to the system. And if anybody's ever relocated more than 1 hour away from where you currently are, you probably know that struggle. So time away from home, commutes, things like that. So reconnected with a friend that I'd worked with while I was in college in pharmacy. And was kind of managing that business and just decided, man, if I'm going to manage a business, it'd be cool if it was something that I'm passionate about. So began exploring things, and fly fishing just seemed like a good fit.
Yeah.
So
Now, I'm curious, did you miss many classes because you were out on the river? It's okay. It's the statute of
Or was it from
limitations
the
is
night
passed.
before? I mean, we
yeah.
no, yeah, I fear to even say this, but I do remember missing a class once. It was a history class, of course, and unfortunately, it was Dr. Zabo's.
Oh, no.
Many apologies. 1,000 apologies for that, Dr. Zabo, but the fishing was excellent that day, and I just couldn't leave. So, yeah.
There you go. Preston, what about you? Graduated in 2009. Did you leave the area? Did you want
I
to?
had no idea what I wanted to do
Yeah.
when I was getting out of college. I graduated with an environmental science degree. At the time, we were the first cohort to go through that program under Dr. DeWald. And it was kind of and it still sort of is, an amalgamation of all these different majors and disciplines, and I gravitated towards hydrology. But I found myself really just chasing anything environmental. Passionate for the weather. I went to UNC Asheville post-graduation here for a semester until I landed my first job as sustainability analyst over at Haywood Community College. That was the first position of sorts even for the system of all 50 community colleges in North Carolina. And what we were tasked with was to make the campus green with no budget. So that was a struggle for 3 years. And I don't know if I became jaded or I saw the writing on the wall, but I got out in time before they closed that program down and moved over to University of Tennessee in Knoxville to do the very same work, sustainability manager. However, with that campus, I had $1 million budget.
Yeah.
And so our mission was to bring down greenhouse gas emissions. And so my peer here is Lauren Bishop, who does that for Western Carolina University. And so that was fun, and I stayed in academia for 11 years, and I just got tired of it. I don't know if it was the monotony or something, but something broke. And I talked to a lot of friends and family, and we just also knew that Knoxville wasn't going to be it for us. We just had our child, and we wanted to come back home, so to speak. This was home for us. So I took a job. I was going to start a business. I decided not to do that, to chase that kind of passion. So I took a job as the finance manager for Southern Appalachian Wilderness Stewards January of 20. And then everything went to what.
That was a great time to start a new job and move and
sure.
all that.
Yeah, for a nonprofit where the money
Right.
is always soft,
Yeah.
right? Never secured, the benefits or lack thereof, et cetera. But I was just happy to be back.
Yeah.
We, weathered that storm, so to speak, as we all did. And then it was really serendipitous, the timing of it all, where Eric, my predecessor, left this role as executive director for Haywood Waterways. I had been on the board for 3 years, from 10 to about 13, maybe about 2012. And so my connections were still there, and I just applied for the job and just poured my passion into that interview, and here I am 2.5 years later. But there was no path forward. There was no defined. It was just kind of jumping on the opportunities along the way.
So just to for the sake of anybody watching or listening, Haywood County is just to the east of Jackson County, where we are here in Cullowhee. And the Pigeon River flows through Canton.
Yeah, so it starts at the Parkway. Everybody knows Graveyard Fields, Black Balsam Knob, Tennant
Yep.
Mountain, right? Those are the upper reaches of that watershed. Richland Balsam
Yep.
Overlook, the tallest part of the Parkway. The other side is Haywood, on one side is Jackson, right? You're on the Great Balsams. That's the Great Balsam Range, much like the Great Smokies. It's a major range in our area. And so that divides the two counties, but also divides us drastically in other ways too. Culturally, a lot of climate variation
Yes.
between that.
Yeah.
But yes, keep going. I'm sorry. Waynesville is usually a good indicator to say,
gonna
hey,
say,
you're in Haywood when you're passing
Waynesville,
through.
Canton. So
Yeah.
like if you've been driving from anywhere east to campus, you've gone over the Pigeon River. Like you've crossed a bridge on 74, coming into campus through Haywood County.
As you go into
crossed the
Tennessee,
Pigeon.
you're following along the Pigeon as it cuts through into
Yeah.
Newport, right? Because the Pigeon does not meet the French. That confluence does not occur until Newport, Tennessee.
Okay.
So we're part of the French Broad River Basin, but we don't feed the French until Tennessee. Right?
This is the
we
river.
flow north. Yeah.
This is the one that I-40 keeps falling into.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. The Waterville Lake, the dam up through there, and then the whitewater rafting below.
Right,
and through.
right. I don't think I knew when I was a college student here that
No one.
we were in a watershed that flowed to the Gulf of Mexico.
So, yes, and for us here in Cullowhee, it's a little bit different, but we do take that path. It's in a different direction
Yeah.
through the Little Tennessee. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I tell that to some people, they don't believe me, and
Oh, they think the Atlantic.
they think they're well, you're not that far from the beach. Like how on earth does this end up in the Gulf of Mexico? And water doesn't go over the Great Balsams. It
Yeah.
kind of goes around and up, and it was one of those things where afterward, when I came back, it was really fascinating. Dale, the Tuckasegee does the same thing. It flows north.
Yep. That confuses so many.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think that it's among the many things that make this area special. This is one of those things. We're in a remote area. We're a watershed. I didn't know that nothing flowed into Haywood. It all flows out.
It's a great stat to open with.
It really
Yeah,
is.
it is. It's
Yeah.
it's
one
very
or two
cool.
that can do it.
So Dale, you came back, and let's flip back over to kind of the entrepreneurial run of this. I've seen a lot of guys standing out, and girls too, but I've seen a lot of people standing out in the Tuckasegee, especially about 6:30 or 7 in the morning. Pickup truck parked on the side of the road, hopefully all the way on the side of the road. On South River Road, sometimes that doesn't always make it all the way off, but they're out there fishing. And where did you decide that this could be a business and you could actually make some money doing this?
Well, with any business, entrepreneurial enterprise, you want to try to find where there's a niche to be filled. So Bryson City was our first location back in 2014, and it was having built relationships in college through my part-time job over there, and just the timing of what that town was wanting to do with tourism at that time, it just matched. It was a perfect fit. Of course, Jackson County had gotten the Western North Carolina Fly Fishing Trail going with Julie Spiro and those efforts, and it's fantastic. So it just made sense to start there. And gosh, I don't even remember your original question now, so you'll have to cut that
At some point, you decided this was going to be a business.
What was your aha
and
moment?
This is where you're like, oh, maybe I could charge people to do this.
When I was in college, standing in a river waving a stick, so to speak, as Garrett would put it, I would always catch one or two. I had no clue what I was doing, but I wished that I had that spot I could go to and ask for help. The fly shop, the brick and mortar. There was a few places around, but when you walked in, you kind of got the side eye. They knew you were from the college, and it wasn't necessarily the most welcoming experience.
Yeah.
So to that day, that's still a mission of our shop, is to have that welcoming feel when you come in. No matter how you're dressed, no matter what brands you're wearing, you're going to get treated with respect, and it's a service. I've kind of come to accept this here again recently, that I serve. And even though we're in business of fly fishing and guiding and shop guiding, teaching people how to fly fish from the shop floor, it's a service that we're doing. And yeah, it kind of just brought it back to, man, if we could just make a living doing what we love, that's still part of the American dream.
Yeah.
So that's what it comes down to, is that service piece.
So you started in Bryson?
Mm-hmm. Started in Bryson City, 2014. And, kind of coming out of a weird economical environment there, the early 2000s. And as we climbed out of that recession, or whatever it was, I don't know that we ever know those anymore. But we sort of saw an opening to come to Sylva, and my co-owner Bobby and I both live over here. Our families were here, so it made sense to give that a go. Initially, the going joke was, in Sylva you could have your choice of 3 auto stores or 3 fly shops. I mean, there was all kinds of jokes going around about the number of fly shops that were here at that time. But in 2017, we opened Sylva. And again, it was that focus of service, customer service. And we just wanted to have what people needed to fly fish and treat them right. So there's very few things we can control. You know this with your studies. I always say in our business, we can only control how we treat people and lunch. So we can't control the weather. We can't control Duke Energy. We can't control the fish or anything else. So it's just how we treat people and lunch.
So you lead a lot of trips on the Tuckasegee River. The Tuckasegee River kind of gives campus a hug as it kind of goes around and wanders up toward Sylva, and then up through Dillsboro and then around. And by the way, I'm glad that you said, you have a shop where everyone's welcome, where and I can attest to this because I walked in and an English major got good service. So it's absolutely the case. And, when you and I went out, you told me there were 3 kinds of trout typically that you're looking for, and tell us about those.
Yep. So we've got the only native trout to Western North Carolina is the Southern Appalachian brook trout. So what North Carolina Wildlife has done is they've given us a cousin of that fish and stocked our lower elevation rivers. And they do a great job of keeping those stocked fish out of those native first order streams that Preston spends a lot of time in. And so they stock brook trout, rainbow trout, and brown trout. So, if you get a smallmouth kicker, then you can have the true Tuckasegee slam.
The true slam.
And I believe
we got
believe we did
close.
that.
I don't think
we started with a smallmouth.
we got the smallmouth. We got the brook. We got.
Were we missing the brown?
I think we missed the brown.
It's just another reason to go back out.
That's
Yep.
exactly
Yep.
it.
We'll have
Now
to do it
I've got to
again.
go try it again.
We're good at finding those.
So you're out there with your folks on the Tuckasegee. You're looking for these fish. Why did NC Wildlife bring in those additional species?
That's a great question. It's a program that they began, I believe, back in the 70s of stocking those species, not necessarily on the Tuck, but certainly Scotts Creek, the Nantahala River. That's been part of their program for a long time with their hatchery-supported program. But they certainly want to give anglers an opportunity to be successful without harming native populations. Because those native fish and those higher elevation streams, they play a part in the ecology of that habitat. If I said that right, awesome.
You got the nod.
So yeah, it's sort of the program allows anglers to scratch the itch without any harm to the environment, and wherever you stand with Duke Energy, if it wasn't for Duke Energy and the dams that we have, we probably wouldn't be able to have trout in the Tuckasegee.
Sure.
So those lakes and I guess back when it was Nantahala Power and Light, when they established those lakes, they played an integral part even 70 years ago for us to be where we are now.
So the Tuckasegee is a dam-controlled river. Yep. Every morning, well, not every morning, but many mornings, you get a water release.
That's right. And the Tuckasegee's odd in that we have 2 forks with dams on them. So unlike the Nantahala, where it's just like clockwork, 9 a.m. it's on, and at 5 p.m. it's off. It's just one reservoir. There's 2 on the Tuck, an East Fork and a West Fork. So anglers typically have to pay attention to what each dam is doing because they do operate independently most of the time.
Yep.
So, and then unfortunately, we got to do some math.
You do, yeah.
That's why we pay for these guides.
That's right.
I mean, they're math
I'm not going to do
majors
the
in
math.
the water.
That's right.
So the beast is in the east. That's the East Fork. It's going to release an extra 450 CFS, and that number means nothing to you unless you have a visual understanding of the depth and width of the river. And then the West Fork has 250 CFS. So typically you can still wade with the West Fork, but with the East Fork, wading kind of goes out of the question. So, and that's when a lot of times you'll see the boats coming down the Tuck, the drift boats.
Right. Preston, when we're talking about all the things in the water that are good and bad, whether they're native fish or non-native species, when we're talking about dams, what are the kinds of things, especially as you're looking at the pigeon, but I'm sure you pay attention to other stuff around in this region. What are the things historically that have troubled, complicated? There was a pretty large operation in Canton that was right next to the river.
Yeah, we're not shy about talking about it anymore.
Yeah.
Because, they're the boogeyman now, jokingly. But, to pointedly talk about that, 2 weeks after their closure.
And we're talking about the paper mill.
I'm sorry,
that was in Canton.
So this is, Champion, Evergreen, paper
Champion
mill.
Just
the
shut
mill,
down last
Canton,
year. Yeah.
115 years, and you just think, gosh, okay, a mill in the river, another one, yay, but this is a cultural anchor, a socioeconomic anchor, an $84,000 median income loss to the Canton area.
Huge
when the county median is $34,000, a $2.1 million operating budget for the town loss projected, even currently with this fiscal year. So This is not just, we're improving the environment by shutting down something that is a single discharge or a point source discharge into the river that historically has not been friendly. We are still very saddened by that loss. That being said, Zeb, Lisa, the interim town manager, and their board over in Canton have a very forward vision. They're not letting this go. I love Zeb's phrase, this is our moonshot. This is our moonshot, if you will, for the town. And so they're taking that kind of proactively, and we're working with the town through Haywood Waterways and their vision. But, historically, I'm not going to ignore what that mill has done to the river, especially south and below, or rather going north and below downstream. This mill was operating well before the EPA and the Clean Water Act. There's roughly 7 ponds up there that have held all sorts of toxins that we don't want to have in the river that'll have to get unpacked and or secured for the future of that river. That being said, flooding is another major concern.
Huge issue.
And so, again, we have this travesty, but after COVID, after Fred, and after the mill closure, Canton is still going strong and thinking ahead in terms of the resiliency. How can the downtown corridor not only protect itself against the physicality threat, flooding, or the water quality threat through the mill and unpacking of that, but also the economy in the future. Rare is the opportunity that you have in the Canton area in that setting where a downtown is established right on the river. You have a population ready to go next to a major tourist, we'll call it sink over in Asheville, to bring to life a river-type outdoor rec economy. And you already have those folks there with Bear Waters, Pro, Cold Mountain Tubing, and the others, all the guide shops along. So we're excited to see that in the next chapter. Data is telling us that the water is improving downstream. The tannins, right, what we see through into the channel bed, you can pretty much see already down to the bottom. Some of the best smallmouth fishing around. I'm sorry, there's a glitch in the radio there.
A little static.
So part of this too is, Dale speaks
I think
to.
you did that on purpose.
Yeah, I know your triggers now. Dale speaks to a lot of, we meet the customer, we provide that to the customer, but it's that local knowledge. When folks are coming into the area, what's their biggest fear? It's the unknown. I don't know where to go. I don't know if I'm safe parking there, if I have access, will I have signal, what if I get hurt, et cetera, et cetera. These guides, these businesses, the outfitters, they take it all off the table. So we're excited to see that grow along the corridor, especially south of the mill. Clyde is another exciting spot with the River Judge Park and what they're about to do. There's a lot of 08 buyouts from Fred and Ivan, Francis and Ivan rather. And then the buyouts are kind of closing out from Fred back in 19. We just, I wouldn't say celebrated, we just honored the 3rd year anniversary just last weekend. So
These kind of events are supposed to be, 100-year floods or, 500-year floods. I think Canton has experienced 2 major flooding events in 20 years, maybe less than that. Maybe it was like 16 years. The Canton. So, by the way, earlier this year on Western Wednesdays, we talked to Abby Bentley, who was the North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year. She teaches in Haywood County, and she's a science educator. And we talked. She's also taking her kids and putting them in the water, and they're measuring stuff. And she talked a little bit about trying to hold both of those things in your hand. One, this is an industry that employed my family and put food on the table. And the other is I want to be able to turn on the tap in my house and feel comfortable drinking the water that comes out. Or I want to be able to go catch a fish and feel comfortable eating it. Mm-hmm. And so in your mind, just in terms of working in the waterways, how do you find that balance?
A lot of our opportunity for change, improvement in particular, are held by those that have been here longer than I have, longer than I'll ever be, and they know better of their own land than I ever will. So I think through that understanding, we come to meet them with what they need. We are not the water police. We have been in this community, and we go about, we work in it, we live in it, and we want to protect it. But we go about this in a manner that is not going to shame and or get you in trouble by any means. In fact, we're hoping to alleviate that issue. That might be a legality problem or something worse. If I had to jokingly say it, just don't piss people off.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you balance that? It's always, I'm playing this role of seeking opportunities to help my community, at the same time matching those with dollars, wherever they come from, but also listening to what people want me to. So it's kind of a politician role. Just don't piss people off, meet them where they are, but always be aware. I think that's just a really simple formula for what we do. The work, unfortunately, is never ending. Mm-hmm. We're a team of 4. We've been around for this many years, but we could easily be bigger. That being said, our partners carry a lot more work and weight than we do, right? So it's also making sure that we don't suck all the air out of the room because we're more public-facing than, say, the agencies or the towns themselves. So, but they need us and we need them. There's that great symbiotic relationship, much like water, WATR, here in the Tuck, right? That was my first job, working over in Bryson as a field tech. But yeah, so water plays that role here in Jackson and Swain and other parts too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Dale, how do you see that balance?
Oh goodness, well, it's changed so much and evolved. There's old timers, if you will, that visit our Bryson City location and tell us about how the Tuckasegee in downtown Bryson City, probably similar to Canton if I had to bet, in the 70s ran black. And I mean, that's only 50 some years ago. And today, maybe not at this moment, but in the wintertime when there's fewer algae blooms and such, you can see the bottom, but it's not black. Yeah, you can swim in it, maybe wouldn't drink the water. But yeah, it's an evolving process, and rivers are constantly self-improving. We've done a lot of damage to a lot of rivers, particularly in the southeast. Maybe more so than, I don't know, I guess the Rust Belt has had its own issues.
We have plenty of water to recharge it back with.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
We're fortunate in that way.
Rivers are always flushing themselves, but we still have to be advocates for them. They're still, living and breathing, so to speak. And it's great to have guys like Preston, Ken Brown with water, that when we see something happen, when it's a clear water day and we see chocolate milk water flowing in from a tributary, that we can call somebody and say, hey, can we investigate this? And
that's my moment, man. I'm pulling out the shirt. Yes. Haywood Waterways uniform comes on. I'm in the Outback flying down.
And you're not, Preston mentioned, you're not the water police, but you're the water educators for sure. And a lot of times these, I don't want to call them violations because I don't think very few tickets are ever written on these things, but these incidents where there's turbidity issues or straight piping or sewage issues, whatever, it's an education moment. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that's maybe one thing with the blossoming of fly fishing in the last 10 years locally. We're obviously hyper concentrated here. We educate on clean water every day. Our Instagram educates on clean water. If you see us holding a fish or just a picture of a scenery on our Instagram account, its focus is on a clean environment. So the education piece is huge.
Do you find that exposure like really adds up when you have a client on the water and you see at the end of the trip, like they've had this incredible experience? Do you see that change? Or maybe not immediately, but
I think each trip's probably different. I would say everybody's got their own goals on each trip. But the folks that come where catching fish is secondary certainly see that.
Yeah.
If those questions come up, like can we eat the fish or can we drink the water, then you get to have those conversations for sure. But I think for the most part, folks that come from their cubicles to the drift boat,
they're obsessing about your trips, man. Like a week or two prior, like, damn, Friday, Labor Day, can't get here fast enough.
No,
so
absolutely.
They're probably wanting to strike all day, not care too much about the biology, et cetera.
That's right. They have no clue.
And that's all good.
Where we were 50 years ago or where we were 20 years ago even. So,
but they're supporting by funding you,
Yes.
pumping dollars into the economy.
Yep.
The data's out there somewhere, and we have it through Kids in the Creek, right? 83% environmental literacy improvement through our programs. Haywood County, bragging over here in Jackson, has the best biology test scores in all of Western North Carolina. And our superintendent says, partially because it's Kids in the Creek, as an example, but we're focused under the water. I mean, we get snorkels going, that kind of thing. But any time that you have outdoor sports, hunting of any kind or anything, that leads to conservation. That leads to stewardship. I mean, that goes back over 100 years. So this is just that playing out at a very specific scale here on the rivers. And those like Trout Unlimited or the shops or all the folks in these community, they're more the advocates than say those are just living in the area. That, and we rely upon them a lot because, again, we're a team of 4, a county of 60,000, but these folks are on the water way often than we are.
Yeah.
Way more often. Yeah.
This is kind of going back a little bit, but it was not that long ago that Dillsboro removed a small dam that was right there. If you've been to Dillsboro, the bridge right over the
big.
Tuckasegee, it was
It was sizable. You couldn't go over it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I'll say that.
And if you're a fish, you can't go over it. I'm sure that there was a lot of discussion and angst and hand wringing about whether or not to remove that dam. It was removed, and there's still a good rapid there. Actually, there's a great rapid
it's
there that I think is nicknamed Stitches because if you're not careful about how you go over it, they'll give you some stitches over at the hospital. But it changed the river. It changed. Fish are going upstream now, whereas they couldn't go upstream. Did you see that change right away? I mean, and what else happens when you do things like that?
I wouldn't say it was a change right away. Maybe one negative change, if you can imagine there would be from that, is the sediment plume that began to work downstream.
Sure.
That even, how long ago was this they did that?
Yeah, and that can have an effect for years.
Yes. I was going to say, I mean, this is 2000 what they did this?
I was thinking 16.
I was about to say it's probably 12 to 14, but we'll
Okay.
say mid-2000s.
Yeah.
teens.
Yeah.
So that plume, from my understanding, and Ken Brown could probably correct me on this, but is just now in the downtown Bryson City area.
Wow.
Okay. So
It settles.
Yep.
It's not ever moving, right?
It's kind of like a sludge.
that's right. Yeah, exactly. So
Ugh.
now, since that happened, on the fishery side of things, our smallmouth population has started to move. And so we're seeing smallmouth in places we hadn't seen before that. And that's a slow growing fish. So a 12-inch smallmouth on the Tuck would be about a 12-year-old fish.
Wow.
So, and that is a native fish to the Tuckasegee. So we're excited to see that happening for sure.
Running back to the connection between young people and exposure and conservation and stewardship and things like that. When I was on the Tuck last week, was with some people from out of town, and there was a young boy with us. And what I can only say was like this Hollywood cinema crafted moment. We're paddling, and all of a sudden a bald eagle just swoops right over us, goes right down the river for, exactly. Yeah. And this kid, all of a sudden, he'd been kind of bored, to be honest. He's sitting in the middle. He doesn't have a paddle.
Yeah.
He had a squirt gun. But all of a sudden, he stands up, and he points, and he goes, "Bald eagle!" And that thing, kept on for 30 seconds and lights in a tree, and, it's huge, and kind of watches us as we float by. All of a sudden, he opens up. He starts talking about eagles. He starts talking about how it was chemicals in the water that the fish got into, and then the birds would eat the fish, and then the shells of the eagle's eggs would be too thin, and when they went to sit on them, they'd crack, and then the eaglet would die. Like,
somebody just needs to tell him he can get paid for that one day.
Right.
To show them those careers exist. He's going to be chasing that feeling the rest of his life.
This kid spent 2 hours on the water on the Tuck, and the only story he's going to tell is how he saw a bald eagle.
Right.
And that kind of thing is pretty magnificent. I remember as a kid thinking I would never see a bald eagle in the wild. And this is in the 80s, and I'm thinking, they're endangered, they're going to die, they'll just be on the coins.
Wasn't it in the 80s where there was the one like eating the trash or something? Right. It was like on a poster
like
for
Well, the best moments nowadays are the fleeting moments. You can't get your camera fast enough to do that, right? So that eagle passing by, for me, it's the cranes
Yes.
or the kingfisher. I mean, just something that's so quickly moving. It keeps drawing you back. Yeah.
So things like that, things like the reintroduction of elk on the Qualla boundary in Cherokee. There's so much now about this place that didn't seem possible or seemed improbable 50 years ago. We interviewed last season, we interviewed David Joy, and he would tell you a lot about stuff like that. And Ron Rash writes about in his books how, these mountains, there are no old trees in these mountains because they were all cut down. And if you can just imagine these mountains just being clear cut, and how much they've come back. There's, I guess, which is to say, I'm getting around to a question, I promise. There's so much to celebrate, so many things that have come back. But what are the storm clouds that have you worried? What are the things in the future?
I'll give you a literal one. Interview one of your professors here, Dr. Jerry Miller. He's a fluvial geomorphologist.
All right, say that slowly for the folks at home.
If you watch South Park, he's what Randy does.
Okay, we're back in.
He's a fluvial geomorphologist who focuses on transport.
Okay,
What's up, Jerry? I used to have him as a professor. Barely got to be in his class. He's a whip. He's the only leading edge researcher amongst VTech and others like Duke as a partnership to study microplastics. That's our next generational, it's here, but threat, as you say, storm clouds, because we literally have them depositing in Haywood County via rainfall. We have sources of microplastics in the upper portion of our watersheds that have no human input possibilities. So we now know and are proving that with his research that they are being deposited via rainfall, again, because no surface water enters Haywood County. But we are his research kind of sampling, monitoring boots on the ground over in Haywood amongst other partners. But he's a great person to research on that one in terms of existential crises and what is impacting our waterways beyond our current biggest threat is sedimentation. Yep. Turbidity. Yep.
Dale, what do you see?
I think it's the extremes. 2016, we had a serious drought, and it was pretty scary. I mean,
That hurt.
We had things get pretty low.
Yep. Communities were worried about drying up.
Yeah, and then that translated to wildfires that late summer, early fall, leading up to, I guess it was right before Thanksgiving when it started raining again, but like July 4th to Thanksgiving, no rain. And then we come through and we have Tropical Storm Fred and all the other named storms that seem to find their way through here.
5 years of record rainfall across over 100 inches on the plateau 5 years in a row, from one swing to the other.
In 2001 through 2005, 6, whatever it was, I was here. Very much so, WCU was I remember you told me we carry umbrellas.
That's right.
Okay.
That's what it stood for.
And it was every day at 4 o'clock, especially, in the summer, it was going to rain.
It was going to rain.
And I don't think it's that anymore. And we just had Raleigh-Durham Airport recorded the wettest July, or the wettest month ever that they've recorded. And it was great. We had some nice rainfall here. But half of May and June, so 6 to 8 weeks before that July, was dry as a bone. And water warms up as it gets lower. So the trout obviously need cold water to survive. Smallmouth need cold water to survive. And so it starts raining again. We feel good about everything. And now here we are in another dry spell.
We're easy to forget.
Yes.
Quick to forget.
So yeah, I think that's probably, and he mentioned the sedimentation issues because they're one and the same. When we have these floods, that just brings more into the river. So yeah, I think it's the extreme weather on one side or the other.
And these are extremes, not just here in the eastern U.S., right? The comparison to scale is very impressive. We are the wettest part of the eastern U.S. We have these wild extremes that can swing us either way because of that amount, right? You're kind of prone to those extreme by nature of the volume that you receive. Coupled with all of that, not to, I guess, people flocking to because of climate change, whatever that impact may be. So it could be overpopulation, development, lack of water scarcity in the future, say out west, wildfires, overpopulation down south, extreme heat indices coming up here. So we had that stable climate, but even with that opportunity, because it's just luck, right, that we have that, we still have these extremes that we're dealing with. And to accommodate all these people is another concern that we have from an infrastructure standpoint. Especially in Haywood County, 60,000 projected to go to much higher in the next 20 years, more so brought on, exacerbated by the mill closure.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Up on a kind of segment of PVC pipe on top of my garage is a Tempest weather station.
that's a good one.
And I can tell you
went up just a hair.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
I recommend those now.
James
yeah.
has a Tempest and
Yeah.
Preston likes that.
You're now Dr. Hogan, right? I mean, you got it.
That's right. Yeah. I can tell you that we've had, 36/100ths of an inch of rain in August. And this is the September edition of Western Wednesday. We're recording this late August, but not a lot of rain in August. I'll tell you though, I was slightly inspired by you, Preston, and we haven't talked about local yokel weather, but this was a website that you ran for a number of years and provided what I think is one of the most wonderfully just pitch perfect things, which was as local as you could get in terms, and particularly with around winter precipitation, because the funniest darn thing, I can stand out in my yard off Old Cullowhee Road, which is like 2,200 feet. If I can't see the plot balsams.
Oh, it's so frustrating.
But-
I know what you're going to say. Yep.
If I put my drone up above my house, I can see the plot balsam. As the drone flies, 6 miles, 7 miles, not that far, I can see them powdered and glistening with snow, and it's raining, maybe not even raining.
Oh, it's like 33. It's guaranteed.
It's right. And Preston, you spent a lot of time writing about and publishing these forecasts that I don't know if you stayed up all night. Just tell us quickly about local yokel.
We talked earlier about my career, where my career could have been if I didn't spend the time messing around with local yokel weather during the workday, right? No, you say staying up late at night. No, I got my sleep. It was born out of frustration, much like your observation there. For me, it was I lived above Dick's Gap Circle for a while in Cullowhee, and I didn't really notice it. But when I moved out to Silva, I lived above the coffee shop for a number of years. I saw that definitely in play, and it was just pure frustration. So started learning why we weren't getting what we were told we were going to get, because I grew up, as we all did, on the Weather Channel, and so that was the Bible for the weather. And if it said 3 inches in Cullowhee and you got flurries, then you start scratching your head. And so then it became an awareness that nobody was recording the data that the models needed to digest, right? We can't expect things that we don't have a good input on to have a good output. And so then I started putting weather stations into areas at the time, it sounds crazy now, that were never represented, right? So this was late 2000s, 07 July is when it started. And you got to remember too that, 2009, the first iPhone came out?
Yeah.
So, smartphones weren't a thing. We talked about how the timeline, jokingly earlier, of Cullowhee was always kind of behind. Things were still dominant in print.
Yeah.
So the blog format was still, viable. And that's what it became. This Preston's going to rant for, 5-6 minutes of a read and pepper you with as much localized connections as I could make. So I brought in the station to an area not represented, and I started mentioning your holler, your cove, that peak that you hiked. And it's that kind of familiarity that created that ownership mentality that really helped with the followers along the way, that led to ad revenues. And we blossomed to 12 weather stations and
Power 90.5, right?
did the radio, Cataloochee ski area. I did all, for Western with Todd when he was running things over there, and he's in a different role now, for sports rather. For Cataloochee was a weird thing too, because I gave them the weather forecast and they ran with it, but that dovetailed into a whole new thing of snowmaking, right? So I ended up
That's right.
Where Chris and Tammy would get calls up at CAT and saying, "Hey, can you come down and make snow at my property? We're in town for a week." Like, we don't do that, lady. You know, what are you calling us for? Or guy. And
I can see the snow. I didn't get any snow, and I want the snow.
Yeah, I'm from Atlanta. The 1 week of the year, I timed it. You should help me. So, anyways, they knew that I had a small home gun, a snow making machine, and that kind of blossomed into a new lead, if you will, and now I make snow during the winter for people mainly in Highlands and Cashers. That's where the money is. So I raise the rates every year, and they don't blink an eye, and I continue to raise rates.
Just keep it off the driveway so I don't have to,
now
shovel
with
it.
the family, I rent out the gun, so I just drop it off, say I'll see you in 3 days. Sign your life away if you mess it up. So Lokioko Weather, for 15 years, it just became, I think, the need was met. Everybody had a personal weather station, right? I'm looking at Mr. Hogan's, Dr. Hogan's here on Old Coley Road, the Tempest weather station. These are very good stuff that we're using for data quality and output. I just didn't see the need anymore. Everything's app-based nowadays. So I kind of bowed out. I don't know if it was becoming jaded, but I just bowed out. I was a little tired of it, 15 years. And then moved to Haywood County and have segued into this role and another couple of other side endeavors. Yeah.
I think it's really, I love telling that story, though, about how we live in an area that can sometimes feel incredibly small. It's huge, it's expansive, you can get lost and they won't find you. But again, I can, if I can climb a tree, I can see the Platte balsams, right? But it's a totally different climate up there.
We have roughly, at any given time, 4 to 6 climates available to us here in Southwest North Carolina, right from our deep valleys all the way up to 6,400 feet. It's more like southeastern Canada. So and you can
really
drive
wild.
20 minutes to drop 20 degrees. That was the other thing that really hooked me was, if I wanted to go to the top of the world, at least in my world for the Southeast, 20-minute drive. Well, 30-minute, 40-minute drive from Cullowhee, yeah.
Yeah, you can sit here in the summertime, and maybe it's 82 degrees, and if you drive up to Water Rock Knob off the Parkway, guaranteed 10 degrees difference, right? And maybe more.
Yeah, the potential for the staycation is higher here than nowhere else, right? You can have a great time and just take time off of work if you can do that. And just stay in your own area. But we also get sensitized to this, or desensitized to this. Taking for granted how much rainfall we receive. Not many people conserve it or use rain barrels. That was extremely popular for us during the 2016 drought. We gave out 100 rain barrels across the county, but not a drop fell to collect. So I think people take for granted what we have in this climate, both in a kind of a refuge, but also a buffer of what's to come. So I think Southern Appalachia in particular is going to be an explosive spot for growth over the next 30 to 50 years.
Dale, Preston, thank you so much. It's been
a lot of
great
fun.
talking to you,
Yeah.
and appreciate you guys hanging out with us.
Get in the water.
Yep. Go Cats.
Go
That's
Cats.
right. Go Cats.
Such a great time, spending some time with Dale and Preston, hearing about our Western North Carolina waterways and some fly fishing on the Tuckasegee. So wanted to give a special thanks to both of those guys for coming out and spending time with James. Maybe should have recorded that out on a boat somewhere, but here we are in Cullowhee. Speaking of being in Cullowhee, want to make sure that you guys all are aware of some upcoming fun that we have. We've got our home opener here against Campbell University on September 7th. Don't miss out on tailgating and football here in Cullowhee. Followed by Family Weekend, October 4th through the 6th. And I'd be remiss if I didn't make sure that I shared legacy pinning ceremony. So for all of our alums out there who brought sons, daughters, nieces, nephews, siblings, and brought them here to Cullowhee this fall, make sure that you join us for legacy pinning. It's such a great opportunity to recognize our legacy families and our newest catamounts. Last but certainly not least, homecoming, November 1st through the 3rd. We're going to kick off homecoming week with lots of fun activities here in Cullowhee. But if you can't make it down until the weekend, make sure that you join us downtown. The homecoming parade is going to be at 6 o'clock on Friday night, downtown Silva, followed by Alumni Central as we do a downtown Silva takeover. Football on Saturday. Football on Saturday. So be here. Come back, join us. We're looking to pack Silva, pack Cullowhee, and support the Cats. thanks again to Dale and Preston, and to each and every one of you following us and listening to us at home. Make sure, if you don't follow our social medias, that you take advantage of that. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Follow us and keep up to date with all of our activities that we've got going on. And until next time, go Cats.